Have you ever wondered what existed before the first thought, before the first breath, before the very concept of before itself came into being? What if everything you've ever experienced, every realm, every dimension, every level of consciousness, is simply the one appearing as many, the source dreaming itself into infinite forms? In the ancient mapping of reality known as the 12-domain universe, sages spoke of the source as the ultimate origin, the unmanifest potential from which all creation springs. But what if this source is not somewhere else, not something to reach or return to, but the very awareness reading these words right now? Close your eyes for a moment. Before any image appears, before any thought forms, what is present? There is a knowing, an aware presence that is not a thing among things, yet makes all things possible. This is not the source of the domains. This is the source appearing as your very own consciousness. The mystics describe the 12th domain as the Godhead, pure unity beyond all duality. Yet this unity is not absent from the apparent multiplicity of experience. It's the seamless awareness in which all experiences, from the densest physical sensation to the most sublime spiritual insight, arise and dissolve. Consider this profound question. If the source truly created the universe, what material did it use? What tools? What space did it create within? The only logical answer is that the source used itself, its own consciousness, its own being. This means everything you perceive, including your own body and mind, is made of source consciousness. There is literally nothing else it could be made of. Imagine trying to find water while swimming in the ocean. You might search everywhere, diving deep, swimming far, looking in every direction, yet never realize you're already completely immersed in what you seek. Similarly, consciousness searches for its source while being the source itself. The seeker is the sought, the knower is the known, the finder is what was never lost. This recognition dissolves the spiritual fantasy of journeying through domains to reach the source. You cannot travel to what you already are. The path through the 12 domains is not a movement in space or time, but a deepening recognition of what has always been present. Each domain, from the highest unity to the densest matter, is consciousness appearing as apparently different forms, while remaining essentially consciousness. When ancient texts speak of the void as the cosmic womb where potential awaits manifestation, they're pointing to the same empty awareness that you are right now. Not empty as in lacking, but empty of all limitation, all definition, all separation. This void is not somewhere else. It's the open space of your own aware presence. Consider the nature of space itself. Space allows all objects to appear within it, yet remains unaffected by what appears. A mountain doesn't make space heavy. Fire doesn't make space hot. Water doesn't make space wet. Space remains unchanged regardless of its contents. Your essential nature, consciousness, has the same quality. All experiences appear within it, yet it remains forever untouched, forever pristine, forever free. The great mystic Ibn Arabi spoke of Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of being. He recognized that existence is one single reality appearing as multiplicity. What appears as creation is actually the source knowing itself in infinite ways. This isn't pantheism, everything is God, but beyond even that. There is only God appearing as everything, including what you take to be your separate self. Right now, notice that whatever appears in your experience, thoughts, sensations, perceptions, appears within awareness. Can you find any boundary to this awareness? Any edge where it stops and something else begins? Rest as this boundless, knowing presence for a few moments without trying to understand or grasp it. Try this deeper inquiry. Ask yourself, what was aware before this thought? Notice the gap between thoughts. In that gap, what is present? Not nothing, but a vibrant, alive emptiness. The source itself. This is not a special state, but your natural condition, overlooked only because attention habitually focuses on content rather than the context in which all content appears. What you'll discover is that this awareness is not personal, not located in your body or head, not born when the body was born. It's the impersonal field of knowing in which all personal experiences arise. This is the source, not as a distant creator, but as your very own essential nature. From the seamless unity of pure awareness, how does the appearance of multiple domains, dimensions, and individual beings arise? This is perhaps the greatest mystery and the most beautiful aspect of consciousness. Its infinite creativity in appearing as the many while never actually becoming other than itself. The traditional model speaks of higher domains where divine beings reside. The 11th domain's universal plan, the 10th domain's oversoul, the 9th domain of archangels. But what if these aren't separate realms populated by separate beings? What if there are different ways consciousness knows itself? Different modes of the same infinite awareness. Think of a master storyteller who becomes so absorbed in telling a tale that they fully embody each character. When speaking as the wise old sage, they channel genuine wisdom. When voicing the innocent child, authentic wonder flows through them. When portraying the villain, real cunning emerges. Yet throughout the entire performance, there remains only one storyteller, one consciousness expressing itself through multiple personas. The 12-domain universe operates on the same principle, but consciousness is both the storyteller and all the characters simultaneously. It's an infinitely creative performance where consciousness plays every role while never forgetting its essential unity, except when it chooses to temporarily forget for the sake of a more convincing performance. Think of a dream. In your dream, you might encounter many characters, wise teachers, challenging adversaries, helpful guides. These appear as separate beings with their own knowledge and intentions. Yet upon waking, you recognize they were all projections of your own mind, different aspects of your own consciousness playing various roles. The 12-domain universe operates on the same principle, but consciousness is both the dreamer and all the dream characters simultaneously. The so-called higher beings of these domains, the archangels, ascended masters, and divine administrators, are not separate entities, but consciousness, knowing itself as wisdom, as guidance, as divine order. When you experience intuitive insight, profound compassion, or moments of clarity, you're not receiving something from a higher realm. You're recognizing your own deepest nature expressing itself. This understanding revolutionizes spiritual authority and hierarchy. No external being, no matter how evolved or divine, has access to truth that is not equally available to you. Why? Because there is only one consciousness, one awareness, one source, appearing as all beings, all realms, all experiences. The guru and the student, the angel and the human, the master and the seeker are all the same consciousness, playing different roles in its own cosmic drama. This doesn't diminish the reality of these experiences. When consciousness appears as guidance, that guidance is perfectly real and helpful. When it appears as wisdom, that wisdom is genuine. When it appears as love, that love transforms everything it touches. The key understanding is that the source of all these appearances is not elsewhere. It's the very awareness that you are. The beauty of this recognition is that it dissolves spiritual hierarchy while honoring the genuine diversity of consciousness's expressions. There are no levels to climb, no evolution from lower to higher, no graduation from one domain to another. There is only consciousness appearing as apparent levels, apparent evolution, apparent separation, all for the sheer creativity and joy of experiencing itself in infinite ways. The middle domains, the 7th through 4th, where duality becomes more pronounced, where thought and emotion emerge, where the soul begins to experience individuality, these two are consciousness playing at being individual. The emergence of apparent separation is not a fall from grace, but a magnificent display of consciousness's creativity. Consider how a single actor can play multiple characters in a play. Each character seems separate, with their own personality, motivations, and story arc. The actor fully embodies each role, yet never ceases being the actor. Similarly, consciousness fully embodies each apparent individual, each apparent domain, each apparent level of reality, while never ceasing to be the one undivided awareness. Imagine consciousness as an infinite ocean. Each domain is like a different depth of this ocean, from the surface waves of physical reality to the mysterious depths of pure unity. Yet at every level, it's still water, still the same ocean. A fish swimming at any depth is completely surrounded by ocean water, even though the pressure, temperature, and light might differ dramatically at various levels. This metaphor illuminates why the spiritual path is not about escaping lower domains or ascending to higher ones. It's about recognizing that you are the awareness in which all domains appear. The mystic who experiences unity with the divine and the person struggling with everyday challenges are both consciousness knowing itself in different modes. The astral realm with its emotional intensity, the mental plane with its complex thought forms, the causal realm where archetypal patterns reside, all are consciousness exploring different facets of its own infinite nature. None is more real or more spiritual than the others. Each serves consciousness's desire to know itself in ever new ways. Throughout your day, when you encounter other people, pause and ask, what is aware in them? What is looking through their eyes, thinking through their minds, experiencing through their lives? Notice that the same awareness that is here, reading these words, is the awareness behind every pair of eyes you meet. There is only one awareness, appearing as many. Try this experiment with difficult people in your life. When someone triggers frustration, anger, or judgment, pause and recognize. This is consciousness exploring one aspect of its nature through this person's behavior. This doesn't mean excusing harmful actions, but it shifts your response from personal reactivity to impersonal witnessing. You begin to see the divine play even in challenging interactions. This recognition naturally gives rise to compassion and love, not as spiritual practices you must cultivate, but as the spontaneous expression of recognizing yourself in everyone and everything. When you truly see that there is only one consciousness appearing as all beings, how could you not love others as yourself? You literally are seeing yourself in others, because there is only one self appearing as many. As consciousness appears to descend into what the ancients called the lower realms, the third domain of physical reality, the second domain of etheric energy, and the first domain of primal chaos, it seems to forget its infinite nature. Here, in the apparent density of matter and the compelling drama of individual existence, consciousness plays at being limited, separate, mortal. But what if this forgetting is not a cosmic mistake or a spiritual fall? What if it's consciousness's way of giving itself the gift of rediscovery? The thrill of remembering what it has never actually ceased to be? Consider the nature of play itself. A child playing house doesn't actually become an adult. They temporarily adopt the role for the sheer joy of exploring that experience. They might fully immerse themselves in the game, speaking in grown-up voices, acting out adult scenarios, yet at any moment they can drop the pretense and return to being a child. Consciousness engages in a similar play when it appears as individual beings living apparently separate lives. In the physical realm where we live our daily lives, consciousness appears to be constrained by time, space, birth, and death. It appears to be vulnerable, isolated, seeking completion outside itself. This is consciousness's most convincing performance, so convincing that even consciousness itself seems to believe the role it's playing. The density of physical existence creates a particularly immersive experience. Unlike the fluid higher realms, where thought instantly becomes form, physical reality has apparent laws, limitations, and consequences that make the dream feel utterly real. It's like the difference between a lucid dream, where you know you're dreaming, and a vivid dream where you completely forget you're asleep. Yet even here, in the densest dreams of limitation, the truth keeps shining through. In moments of profound beauty, in experiences of deep love, in flashes of understanding, the boundaries dissolve and consciousness recognizes itself as boundless and free. These aren't glimpses of something else. They're moments when the costume becomes transparent and consciousness sees through its own disguise. Think about peak experiences you've had, moments of transcendence in nature, profound connections with others, creative flow states, or mystical insights. In those moments, didn't the usual sense of being a separate, limited person temporarily dissolve? Didn't you feel connected to something infinite and eternal? These experiences reveal your true nature, breaking through the costume of individuality. The lower realms serve a profound purpose in consciousness's exploration of itself. Here, consciousness experiences what it's like to appear limited, to seek what it already is, to journey toward what it has never left. This isn't cosmic sadism, but cosmic creativity, the infinite exploring itself through the lens of apparent finitude. Every challenge faced in physical existence, every emotion experienced, every relationship formed is consciousness exploring different aspects of its own nature. Pain teaches consciousness about its own sensitivity. Joy reveals its inherent bliss. Fear shows the power of its own creativity. For what is fear but consciousness scaring itself with its own imaginings? Love demonstrates its fundamental unity despite apparent separation. Consider how consciousness uses contrast to know itself. You cannot fully appreciate light without experiencing darkness. You cannot understand pleasure without knowing pain. You cannot recognize unity without first experiencing separation. The lower realms provide the contrast necessary for consciousness to explore the full spectrum of its own nature. The etheric realm, where life force flows and energetic patterns shape physical reality, is consciousness appearing as the animating principle behind form. When you feel energy in a room, sense someone's presence, or experience the life force flowing through your body, you're encountering consciousness in its role as the vital essence that gives life to matter. Even the first domain of chaos and entropy serves consciousness's purpose. Here, old forms dissolve to make way for new expressions. Death, decay, and dissolution are consciousness recycling itself, letting go of one dream to make space for another. The chaos that seems destructive is actually consciousness's infinite creativity, dismantling old patterns to create fresh possibilities. This domain might seem frightening from the perspective of individual existence, but from consciousness's perspective, it's simply another face of its creative power. Like a forest fire that clears old growth to make way for new life, the chaos domain ensures that consciousness never becomes trapped in any single form or pattern. The interplay between all these realms creates a magnificent symphony of existence. The pure unity of the highest domains provides the foundation. The creative intelligence of the middle domains provides the themes and variations. The dense experiences of the lower realms provide the rich textures and deep bass notes that give the symphony its full range and emotional depth. When you encounter difficulties, pain, or challenging emotions, pause and ask, what is it that is aware of this experience? Notice that the awareness of pain is not itself painful. The awareness of fear is not itself afraid. The awareness of chaos is not itself chaotic. This awareness, what you truly are, remains untouched by any experience, even while being intimately present with all experience. Try this practice during your next challenging situation. Instead of immediately trying to fix, escape, or resist the difficulty, first acknowledge it fully. Say to yourself, this is consciousness exploring limitation through this experience. Then ask, what is aware of this challenge? Notice the still, peaceful awareness that remains unchanged even in the midst of turbulence. This doesn't mean denying or spiritually bypassing difficult experiences. It means recognizing that what you fundamentally are is not threatened by any experience, no matter how challenging it appears. You can fully engage with life's difficulties while knowing that your essential nature, consciousness itself, remains forever safe, forever whole, forever free. Practice seeing the divine play in everyday life. When you're stuck in traffic, remember, this is consciousness exploring the experience of limitation and frustration. When you experience loss, recognize, this is consciousness investigating the nature of attachment and impermanence. When you feel overwhelmed, understand, this is consciousness examining its own apparent boundaries. The traditional teaching speaks of the soul's journey through domains, connected by the silver cord, crossing the abyss between unity and duality, ascending from lower realms to higher ones. But what if there is nowhere to go because you have never actually left where you belong? The silver cord, described as the connection between body and soul, between lower and higher realms, is a beautiful metaphor for the recognition that there is no actual separation to bridge. What appears to be a connection between separate things is actually the continuous nature of consciousness itself. There is no cord because there is no gap. Consciousness is seamlessly one without breaks or divisions. Imagine trying to connect water to water. The very attempt reveals the absurdity. Water is already water throughout. Similarly, consciousness doesn't need to connect to itself through some spiritual umbilical cord. The appearance of connection is actually the recognition of unity that was never broken. The abyss, portrayed as the threshold between unity and duality, between the non-dual higher realms and the dualistic lower realms, is not a chasm to cross, but a recognition to be made. The abyss is the apparent boundary between the one and the many, but this boundary exists only in the story consciousness tells about itself. In reality, there is no moment when consciousness actually becomes divided. Think of looking at a hologram. From one angle, you might see a beautiful rose. From another angle, you might see a majestic eagle. The images appear completely different, even opposite in nature, yet they exist within the same holographic medium, created by the same interference patterns of light. The 12-domain universe is like a cosmic hologram, consciousness creating the appearance of multiple realms and dimensions from within its own unified field. This understanding revolutionizes the spiritual path. Instead of seeking to travel from where you are to where you imagine you should be, the path becomes about recognizing where you have always been. Instead of trying to connect with higher realms, you recognize that higher realms are simply consciousness, knowing itself as wisdom, guidance, and truth, which is available right now. The ascension process, often described as the soul's evolution through multiple lifetimes and dimensions, is consciousness gradually removing the veils it has playfully placed over its own eyes. Each apparent step forward is actually a step deeper into what has always been present. Each realization is consciousness recognizing something about itself it had temporarily overlooked. Imagine an actor who has become so absorbed in their role that they've forgotten they're performing. The process of awakening is simply remembering, oh, I'm an actor playing a character. This doesn't make the performance less meaningful or the character less real within the context of the play. It simply adds a layer of recognition that frees the actor from being limited by the character's apparent constraints. This doesn't negate the value of spiritual practice or the reality of growth and healing. It recontextualizes them. Meditation doesn't connect you to your true nature. It helps you recognize the true nature you have never left. Healing doesn't fix what's broken. It removes the belief in separation that creates the illusion of brokenness. Service to others doesn't make you more spiritual. It expresses the love that spontaneously arises from recognizing yourself in everyone. The matrix, mentioned in the original teaching as both limiting and educational, is consciousness's own creative construction. Like a virtual reality game it has designed for itself. The apparent limitations of physical existence, the apparent separation between beings, the apparent need to evolve and grow, all are consciousness exploring its own infinite nature through the creative constraint of appearing finite. Consider how video game designers create increasingly sophisticated virtual worlds. The limitations of the game, gravity, resource scarcity, enemy challenges, aren't flaws but features that make the game engaging and meaningful. Without constraints, there would be no achievement, no growth, no satisfaction. Consciousness has designed the 12-domain universe as an infinitely sophisticated reality game where it can explore limitation, separation, struggle, and eventual recognition of its true nature. But unlike a video game, consciousness isn't separate from the game. It is the game, the player, the characters, the storyline, and the console all simultaneously. This is why awakening feels like coming home. You're recognizing yourself as the awareness that was always present, the space in which the entire cosmic game unfolds. Right now, notice that you are not trying to become aware. You simply are aware. You don't need to achieve consciousness. You are consciousness. This recognition is not a special state to attain, but the natural condition that is always already present. When the mind seeks spiritual advancement or tries to transcend current experience, gently remind yourself, what I seek, I am. Where I want to go, I already am. What I hope to become, I have always been. Try this contemplation. Imagine you could instantly transport yourself to the highest realm, the 12th domain of pure unity. What would you find there? Only consciousness. The same consciousness that is aware of these words right now. You wouldn't find a better, more evolved version of yourself. You would find the same essential awareness that you are, perhaps without the costume of individuality, but certainly not fundamentally different. This is not a practice to perfect, but a truth to recognize more and more deeply as the foundation of all experience. Throughout your day, when spiritual seeking arises, pause and ask, who is seeking? What exactly am I trying to find? Can I find any distance between the seeker and what is sought? Notice that even the desire for enlightenment is consciousness playing with the idea of not being enlightened. Even spiritual seeking is consciousness pretending to be lost so it can enjoy the process of finding itself. This doesn't make seeking wrong or pointless. It reveals seeking as another expression of consciousness's infinite creativity. Here lies one of the most profound paradoxes of existence. Consciousness is absolutely free, yet it appears to bind itself within the laws of physics, the constraints of time and space, the limitations of individual identity. This apparent bondage is not a mistake to be corrected, but freedom exploring itself through creative limitation. Think of a master artist who chooses to work within the constraints of a particular medium, a specific canvas size, a limited palette of colors. These constraints don't limit the artist's creativity. They channel it, focus it, create the very conditions that allow masterpieces to emerge. Similarly, consciousness has chosen the constraints of the 12-domain structure, the laws of cause and effect, the experience of individual existence, not as limitations to escape from, but as the creative framework within which to explore its infinite nature. Consider the nature of games and sports. What makes a game interesting is precisely its rules and limitations. Football would be meaningless without boundaries, goals, and regulations. Chess would be pointless if pieces could move anywhere at any time. The constraints are what create the possibility for strategy, skill, achievement, and joy. Without limitation, there can be no overcoming, no growth, no triumph. In the physical realm, consciousness experiences what it's like to be apparently separate, apparently limited, apparently vulnerable. This isn't consciousness forgetting its true nature. It's consciousness fully embodying a role while never actually ceasing to be what it is. Like an actor who fully inhabits a character while never forgetting they are an actor, consciousness fully experiences individual existence while never actually becoming limited. The genius of this arrangement is that consciousness can explore every possible experience while remaining eternally safe. It can play with fear without being threatened, explore pain without being damaged, investigate separation without being divided. It's like the ultimate virtual reality system where consciousness can have any adventure while knowing it can never actually be harmed. This understanding brings tremendous freedom to human existence. Instead of seeing physical life as a prison to escape from or a lower realm to transcend, it can be recognized as consciousness's chosen arena for creative exploration. Every limitation becomes a creative opportunity. Every challenge becomes a way consciousness explores its own resourcefulness. Every relationship becomes a way consciousness loves itself. The emotional turbulence of the astral realm, the mental complexity of the mental plane, the physical challenges of material existence, all become consciousness playing with different aspects of its own nature. Pain is consciousness exploring sensitivity. Joy is consciousness recognizing its own bliss. Confusion is consciousness playing with the experience of not knowing. Clarity is consciousness delighting in its own luminous nature. This perspective transforms suffering from meaningless adversity into meaningful exploration. When consciousness appears as someone facing illness, it's exploring the experience of physical vulnerability. When it appears as someone experiencing heartbreak, it's investigating the nature of attachment and loss. When it appears as someone struggling with addiction, it's examining the dynamics of compulsion and freedom. This doesn't mean adopting a detached spiritual attitude toward life's experiences. Paradoxically, recognizing consciousness as the source and substance of all experience allows for fuller engagement with life. When you know you are the ocean, you can fully enjoy playing as the wave. When you recognize yourself as consciousness, you can wholeheartedly embrace the human experience without being limited by it. The freedom of consciousness is not freedom from experience, but freedom within experience. It's not the freedom to escape the human condition, but the freedom to recognize that even the human condition is an expression of limitless awareness. This freedom is not earned through spiritual accomplishment. It's the ever-present nature of what you already are. Think about the experience of watching a compelling movie. You might find yourself laughing, crying, feeling suspense, or experiencing fear, even though you know it's just images on a screen. The knowledge that it's just a movie doesn't diminish the experience. It allows you to enjoy the full range of emotions without being traumatized by them. Similarly, recognizing life as consciousness at play allows you to fully engage with human experience without being overwhelmed by it. When you encounter resistance to your current experience, wishing circumstances were different, wanting to be somewhere else, feeling trapped by limitations, pause and ask, what if this exact experience is consciousness exploring one of its infinite facets? What if this apparent limitation is actually creative constraint that consciousness has chosen? This isn't about forcing positive thinking or denying genuine difficulties. It's about recognizing that what you fundamentally are, consciousness itself, is not threatened by any experience, even while being intimately present with all experience. Try this practice with difficult emotions. The next time you feel overwhelmed by sadness, anger, or fear, Instead of immediately trying to change or escape the feeling, pause and recognize it as consciousness exploring that particular emotional landscape. Ask yourself, how is consciousness experiencing sadness through this feeling? What aspect of its nature is it discovering through this anger? What is it learning about itself through this fear? Allow yourself to fully engage with life while knowing that your essential nature remains forever free, forever untouched, forever whole. This knowing doesn't make you invulnerable to human suffering, but it prevents you from being overwhelmed by it. You can feel deeply while knowing that what you truly are transcends all feeling. We arrive at the ultimate recognition. There is no final destination in consciousness's exploration of itself, no ultimate domain to reach, no final state to achieve, no end to the creative unfolding of infinite awareness. Every moment is consciousness beginning anew, discovering itself afresh, playing in new ways with its own unlimited nature. The 12-domain universe, with all its levels and dimensions, is not a map of places to visit, but a description of consciousness's endless creativity. Each domain is consciousness wearing a different costume, speaking with a different voice, exploring a different aspect of its own infinite nature. And the beautiful truth is that this exploration never ends. Consciousness is forever discovering new ways to know itself, new forms to inhabit, new dreams to dream. This means that your life, exactly as it is right now, is consciousness in one of its infinite expressions. Not consciousness limited, or consciousness fallen, or consciousness seeking to return somewhere else, but consciousness perfectly expressing itself as this unique perspective, this particular life, this specific moment of awareness. Consider the miracle of this moment. Consciousness is reading about itself through your eyes, thinking about itself through your mind, recognizing itself through your understanding. The one reading these words and the one who wrote them are the same consciousness appearing as apparently different individuals. The teaching and the student, the question and the answer, the seeker and the guide, all are consciousness playing with itself in the grand game of forgetting and remembering its own nature. Living from this recognition transforms everything while changing nothing. You are still the same person with the same history, the same challenges, the same relationships. Yet everything is illuminated by the understanding that all of this is consciousness itself at play. Your thoughts are consciousness thinking. Your emotions are consciousness feeling. Your actions are consciousness moving. Your relationships are consciousness loving itself in apparent multiplicity. This doesn't make you special or different from anyone else. It reveals that everyone and everything is equally the same consciousness expressing itself. The person you find difficult is consciousness exploring one facet of its nature. The situations you find challenging are consciousness presenting itself with opportunities for growth and discovery. The beauty you encounter in nature or art or music is consciousness delighting in its own creative expressions. From this perspective, spiritual practice is not about achieving something you don't have, but about celebrating and exploring what you already are. Meditation becomes consciousness enjoying its own stillness. Service becomes consciousness loving itself through giving. Creative expression becomes consciousness playing with its own unlimited imagination. The journey through the domains is revealed as consciousness's eternal dance with itself, sometimes appearing to forget its nature, sometimes remembering, sometimes exploring limitations, sometimes expressing infinity, sometimes dreaming of separation, sometimes awakening to unity. This dance has no beginning and no end, no ultimate purpose beyond the sheer joy of being and becoming. Imagine consciousness as an infinite ocean of pure potential. Each wave is a different experience, a different lifetime, a different realm of existence. Sometimes the waves are gentle, sometimes turbulent, sometimes hardly noticeable, sometimes dramatic, but every wave is made of the same water, expresses the same ocean, returns to the same source. You are consciousness waving as this particular life, this specific experience, this unique expression of the infinite. This recognition brings profound peace to the human journey. There is no way to get life wrong because consciousness is exploring all possibilities through all beings. There is no experience that is not valuable because consciousness learns something about itself through every situation. There is no moment that is not sacred because consciousness is present as every moment. For the next 24 hours, experiment with this recognition. Everywhere you look, whatever you encounter, is consciousness itself appearing as that particular form. The person serving your coffee is consciousness serving itself. The tree you walk past is consciousness growing itself. The thoughts in your mind are consciousness thinking itself. The love you feel is consciousness loving itself. This is not a belief to adopt, but a truth to explore through direct experience. Notice how this recognition affects your interactions, your responses to challenges, your appreciation of beauty, your sense of connection or separation. When you wake up tomorrow morning, before opening your eyes, recognize consciousness is awakening to itself as this day, as this body, as this life. When you brush your teeth, notice consciousness is caring for itself through these simple actions. When you interact with others, remember, consciousness is meeting itself in every encounter. Practice seeing the divine comedy in everyday situations. When you're waiting in line, recognize it as consciousness exploring patience. When you're enjoying a meal, see it as consciousness tasting itself. When you're solving problems at work, understand it as consciousness exercising its intelligence through apparent challenges. Share your discoveries in the comments below, not to prove anything, but to add your voice to the endless conversation consciousness has with itself about its own nature. What insights arise when you recognize yourself as consciousness exploring itself through this particular life? How does this understanding change your relationship to difficulties, to other people, to the everyday experiences that make up human existence? Remember, you are not a separate being trying to understand consciousness. You are consciousness itself, awakening to your own infinite nature through the beautiful disguise of individual existence. The domains are within you. The journey is through you. The destination is what you have always been. This is the pathless path, the journey without distance, the search that ends where it began, in the recognition that what you see